What's inspirational? I guess I love reading stories of hope, where I see that things have worked out. Because I think right now, if we look at the environment, if we look at the planet, a lot of things look very dire. So I look for inspiration, for stories of hope, of success, wherever I can, because that gives me energy. The instant a person looks at a photograph, they connect with it and it goes across any language. That's what got me into photography. I started out just watching wildlife, and I came across incredible observations, and when I came home I would tell people about it and they wouldn't quite get it. But when I actually brought home a photograph, they were like, oh wow, what did it feel when you were out there observing this animal? And it started out, for example, with a little kingfisher, a small, most beautiful little European bird. And that's when I realized the power of photography, and when I decided to dedicate a lot more time to it. The beautiful thing about photography in comparison to video is that a moment stands still, so people can really soak it up. They can take their time to look at it and understand that instant, that moment a lot better. But at the same time, I do think there's a lot of power in filmmaking and video as well. And I think for me, in my work, the best of it is the combination of still photography and video.
You think people perceive one versus the other differently?
I think if you really have a very powerful image, it makes time stop for that time, for that moment when you're looking at it. While we're used to information streaming at us all this time, video on the web and so on, that you kind of glance at it and don't pay as much attention. But I think with a photograph, you may flip through a magazine, or you may see it on a billboard or somewhere. It might actually capture your attention on a different level. And that's what I think is the power of photography. For me, it all started with an incredible love for nature, that I headed out into the wild, photographing and actually mainly observing with a telescope. And that got me so intrigued with the outdoors. At the beginning, just watching birds, listening to the songs of birds. And I very soon understood that the world is really in trouble. Our natural world is perishing, and we don't really pay enough attention to it. And that, as a teenager, already made me really sad, and I started photographing at that age already, and looked not only at the beauty, but for example, I remember how I photographed a red fox that was run over. And that summer, I had been spending a lot of time observing foxes at their den, how they were playing with their little pups. And for me, it shocked me to suddenly see that fox dead, and I felt that I needed to communicate that. On the one hand, the beauty of seeing the animals playing and being just themselves, and then at the same time the impact we humans have. Of course, a red fox is not an endangered animal, but it's still an animal that is beautiful, and for me, that made me actually run home on a time when I was just getting the milk. In Germany, we still got the milk from the farmer in a little can, and I decided to go back and photograph it at night, and I won my first wildlife photography competition with this image. And I guess this is how I all got started in it. I think, especially in my project Freedom to Roam, when we're talking about wildlife corridors, I get so many emails afterwards, or people coming up to me after a talk and say, wow, I really get it. We do need to create wildlife corridors. We need to do a step further beyond the national park idea. And so I know it on an individual basis that people really love this idea, especially through the presentations or magazine stories that have come out around this. And I also remember how one woman that had not been as involved in conservation saw one of the talks and said, that she now wanted to really dedicate a lot of, actually a lot of funds in the direction of wildlife corridors. And I was quite moved because she really understood the concept. She understood that this was the necessity if we want to keep around large mammals like bison, wolves, grizzly bears. And these are the things that I remember, that people actually were directly moved by the images. Right now I'm doing a project on the Arctic that is connected to an IMAX film, and I was just invited to a museum in Dallas Fort Worth, and for the first time I actually gave a tele student class, I guess. It was to 500 some students, and I was basically broadcasted like on TV, and the students could interact, they could ask questions. It was the first for me. It was quite intriguing seeing yourself there presenting in between, images or video would flow, and the teacher that had me do the teleconference, she would decide whether she would jump to me or to the images that I was showing. And what was great is that the students really got what my project was about, which was a lot about global warming and the issues, how polar bears are affected by this climate change. And the students asked very powerful questions which showed that they actually paid attention throughout those 40 minutes.